things are starting to look interesting for the Chicago Cubs. Things are still confusing for the A's. And things might get bad in Anaheim, even worse than they are now.
You are Locked On MLB. Your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I've been podcasting for well over a decade now, and this is my sixth season here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. You can follow me at Sully Baseball on Twitter, whatever the hell it's called now, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And be sure to follow us and subscribe on YouTube. And if you are going to leave comments, wherever you are, please use that hashtag EverydaySully so I can get an idea of who's listening to me every single day. It's a lot of fun. Hey, I'll tell you, Amy Green is an Everyday Sully. And here's one way I know that, because when I did my podcast with Gabby Hurlbut the other day, I threw out the trivia question, and she put out the answer like lightning speed. The question, and a couple of you got it right, but I had to give my shout out to Amy Green. Follow her on Twitter, and I'm sorry, I'm going to keep calling it Twitter, at AJG1423. The question was about Brock Holt, who is the only person to hit for the cycle in a postseason game, and his third baseman, for the Red Sox at the time. What is his other connection with another great Red Sox third baseman, Wade Boggs? And Amy Green got it correct, which was Holt wore Boggs's Red Sox number 26 until it was finally retired. A bunch of people, including Alejandro Pena, Alvaro Espinoza, Wes Chamberlain, a bunch of people who I forgot even played for the Red Sox. When I was looking at something, Alejandro Pena played for the Red Sox? Yeah, I guess he did in the mid-90s. For those of you who don't remember, Alejandro Pena was a very talented pitcher for Los Angeles and for Atlanta. He picked up, I think, 3 World Series rings for his trouble. He did let up a World Series winning walk-off hit to the Twins, but was a big part of the bullpen when the Dodgers won in 88 and the Braves won in 95. I followed the Red Sox every single day, and I hit, you remember Inside Out when all those memories get popped out, but you still can remember the jingle? That there's one tiny bubble that has a memory of Alejandro Pena with the Red Sox, but it's pretty tiny. But that's right. It took forever for the Red Sox to retire Wade Boggs' number. It never made sense to me. He was an all-time great player for the Red Sox, one of the great hitters of his generation. A guy whose baseball talent was off the charts, and his IQ was off the charts, and he had one bad year. If you look at his stats, he had one lousy year. It happened to have been 1992, which when his contract ran out. The Red Sox didn't offer him a new contract. They let him walk, and the Yankees signed him. He wound up winning a World Series ring for his troubles with the Yankees. A lot of Red Sox fans gave him crap about that. The Red Sox let him go. What is he supposed to do? What is he supposed to do? DoorDash? He signed with the Yankees, picked up a World Series ring. I'm a lifelong Red Sox fan. I'm unapologetic about it. But I can't say I'm a Yankee enthusiast, but I must say, part of me smiled when I saw Wade Boggs get a World Series ring with, he got it with the Yankees in 96, but I was happy he got a World Series ring because he was part of that great 1986 team that didn't win. And he put his heart and guts and soul into it, and scored the insurance run in that Game 6 against the Mets. So the Red Sox didn't retire his number for a long, long time until finally they came to their senses. Maybe they saw the funny episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, or the funny episode he was in of The Simpsons, or the funny episode he was in for Cheers. God, he's got a great comedy resume as well. So that's right, Wade Boggs' number. Hey, the Cubs. There's a couple of things I'm going to talk about West Coast teams on shaky ground. But I do want to bring up the Cubs signed Hector Neris to a free agent contract this afternoon. And I am a fan of this move for the Cubs. Hector Neris pitched for the Houston Astros last year. He was for the last couple of years, actually. He was part of the team that won the World Series in 2022. He was a relief pitcher for Philadelphia for a bunch of years. He's been an effective reliever. He had a very good season last year. I mean, his numbers were great. He struck out 77 batters in 68 and a third innings, had a sub-2 ERA. I don't look at win-loss record. I don't look at saves. That, to me, isn't as important. All the peripheral numbers showed he gave the Houston Astros the last 2 seasons a lot of depth in their bullpen. We saw that, they were able to go to the World Series one year, and he pitched he had 3 appearances in the World Series in 2022, was unscored upon, and he pitched 6 and a third innings in the playoffs against the Texas Rangers this year. I think this is a very good move for the Chicago Cubs, who, lest we forget, the Chicago Cubs finished one game behind the Arizona Diamondbacks in the wild card chase, and we all know where the Diamondbacks ended up. They ended up in the freaking World Series. People were complaining, Rangers, Diamondbacks, I don't know if I like that World Series, while also saying, I don't like big market teams winning all the time because people can't make up their minds, or they just like to complain. I'm not 100% sure what. But I don't think people would have complained so much about the number 6 seed in the National League making the World Series if it was the Cubs, because there are Cubs fans all over the place. You could argue there may be more Cubs fans in Arizona than there are Diamondback fans, but I digress. I think this is going to be a very interesting year for the Chicago Cubs. I don't follow the Cubs as closely as Sam and company over at Locked On Cubs, obviously. But I can't tell you when I'm on Twitter, and yes, that is what I'm calling it, how many times I saw Cub fans post effing Ross. David Ross, who got the job essentially as a way to placate fans as they were destroying the team that won the 2016 World Series. They made the playoffs as a division winner in the COVID season. But the next year, the nanosecond they showed any weakness, they put 2 sticks of dynamite in the team, and they blew the whole team up. No longer keeping Chris Bryant, no longer keeping Baez, Rizzo. Everyone's gone. Everyone is out. The 2016 team, just 8 years later, there's nothing left. And David Ross, who, of course, was a spiritual leader on the team, and he did homer in that Game 7, became the manager. So there was at least one face from 2016 left there. He didn't show that he was a great manager. He probably will be a fine manager eventually. He just got his lumps with the Cubs. But it was also clear that he was not the man for the job down the stretch. Just casually watching, I saw 3 or 4 games on, geez, what the hell is this guy doing as manager? What kind of lineup is he putting up there? How's he handling things? Now they got Craig Counsell, I think everyone agrees is a pretty darn good manager. Is that enough? Well, if a manager is worth 2 or 3 games a year, then maybe that would have been enough to get the Cubs in the playoffs. At least they know they have someone's driving the car that they can be pretty confident in, and he was removed from Milwaukee. And so the team they had last year wasn't a bad team, and they have some key, looks like they are the favorite to bring back Cody Bellinger. And I think Bellinger is a good fit for the Cubs because he's been there before. I would be very nervous if I were a team bringing Bellinger in as a new person with no money in the bank with the team, no goodwill, with the fan base, and have Bellinger sign a big honking contract. I think if you put him back in with the team, which he's already shown some success in, he'd fit right in alongside Dansby Swanson and Seiya Suzuki. And Justin Steele is still hanging around in their rotation. They've lost Marcus Stroman, but they did add Imananga from Japan, who is looking to be a good solid number 2 or 3 starter. And now Neris in the bullpen. This is a Cubs team that, despite some of the big holes that they had in the team last year and a manager who seemed to be in over his head, damn nearly made the playoffs. And lest we forget, this is the Central. There are no Dodgers to compete with in terms of big money spending. There are no Astros to compete with who you know are guaranteed to win 90 games. The Brewers are the defending champions, and the Brewers are still not a bad team. And there's a ton of talent flowing through Cincinnati. I think the Reds have a solid chance to contend. And there's a lot of talent on that Pittsburgh team, lest we forget. But all that, and the Cardinals, who I thought were going to run away with the division last year, they still have some really good players, and they built up their pitching staff. Maybe not with the most durable lot of people, but it is a winnable Central. All the teams have talent, but there is no runaway front runner. The Cubs are putting major leaguers around there and gave the car keys to a good manager. Do I think they're going to win? I don't know. I have to give it some thought. But when they make moves like bringing in Hector Neris to improve the bullpen and a rotation that they've already made some good moves with, and possibly bring back Bellinger to make sure that those holes in the lineup aren't there, do you know what? It may be a fun time in Wrigleyville. Now, look, we have ourselves a weekend coming up where we're going to be eating and eating well. But sometimes you want to make sure you have your resolutions still being tended to. Remember, calendar page flipped into February. How are you doing those resolutions? Still being healthier? You know what? Factor is there. Factor gets you ready to eat meal delivery, and it takes the stress out of meal planning and gets you set up to keep those resolutions going towards the next milestone, which is Super Bowl Sunday. That's when a lot of the resolutions start to fall apart. It's like, I think I'll have some more ribs. Skip the grocery stores. Skip the prep work. Script all that fatigue. Get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door with over 35 meals to choose from, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan plus, vegan minus, veggie, and more. Plus, over 55 weekly add-ons. You'll have a ton of nutritious, flavorful, and delicious options to kickstart your resolutions. Now, Factor now offers loads of snack options like breakfast, smoothie, juices, snacks to keep you going no matter what's on the schedule. And you can completely avoid the takeout trap. I'll just use this app or that app. And next thing you know, you're spending $40, $50, $100 on your dinner. Factor is cheaper than takeout. Get chef-crafted, restaurant-quality meals delivered right to your door. They're ready to eat in just 2 minutes, which means more time for you. And when things get hectic, got your job, got the things, I got my dog. Factor is flexible. Change your delivery order every week with plans from 4 to 18 meals per week, or pause or reschedule. Do you know what? Not only does Factor offer fast, simple solutions when I'm too busy to cook, but they can help me stay on top of my goals with offerings like Protein Plus and all that I said. You can stay on track, and it's going to come in handy if you want to keep these New Year's resolutions going. So head to factormeals.com/LockedOnMLB50 and use code LockedOnMLB50 to get $50 off. That's code LockedOnMLB50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnMLB50 to get $50 off. That's Factor Meal. Good eats. Hey, did you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube? Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. I do not want this podcast to get a mature-only rating because of language. But man, oh man, you can't describe what's happening to the A's without bringing up some profanity. This Las Vegas thing may fall apart. It may fall apart. And part of it is from people who are making plans and don't look ahead. They wanted to build a ballpark in Las Vegas on the site of the Flamingo Hotel. I once stayed at the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas. It's very tacky. And there's also not a lot of room there. And they said, this is where we're going to build. Look at this artist rendering. We did a Photoshop. Okay, Congratulations, you learned Photoshop. There's not enough room there to put a stadium and have all the other things you need to have on it, like a retractable roof. You can't have an outdoor stadium in Nevada. You got to have a roof. And the way they had it, where they wanted to have it, was too close to the airport that having a retractable roof and everything. I don't understand all the regulations, but apparently they wouldn't be able to pull it off. There wasn't enough room there. I've never moved a franchise before, but I would think step one is to go out there with a couple, those little surveyor things and, map it out and say, do we have enough room for a stadium here? They're knocking down, I live in Pasadena, they're knocking down a building in the downtown, and I think they're going to build probably a new apartments that nobody can afford. Okay? I'm going to bet you, before they start building those apartments, they are going to measure it to see if it will fit. So why didn't they do that in Las Vegas? So now they're going, maybe we'll have it here, maybe we'll have it there. Meanwhile, the A's don't have a home after this year, and there's no way Oakland's going to say, why didn't you come back? If I were Oakland, I would tell them to go pound sand. Or say, yeah, you can come back if you sign a 20-year lease. Where are they going to play? And they would go, maybe they'll play in Sacramento, but they're all over the map. But forget that. Where are they going to build the freaking ballpark? And as a public school teacher, that's my other job I have in my life, I can tell you that my antenna is up too when I hear like, hey, you know what? We're going to build this with public funds and we can't afford to pay our teachers. I know they can't. Do you know why? I'm a certified teacher. I don't mean to brag. I don't mean to flex. I'm a certified special education teacher here in the state of California. Earned my certification through California State University, Fullerton. Go Titans, home of Tim Wallach and Kevin Costner for that matter. But I get offers all the time to teach in Nevada. All the time. I probably got 3 more since I started this sentence. Do you want to teach in Las Vegas? Do you want to teach in Las Vegas? Do you want to teach in Las Vegas? They have a huge teacher shortage in Nevada. Do you know why? Because they're one of the worst paid teachers in the country. And that's saying something. And so when the people in Nevada say, hey, we've got a teacher shortage because you can't even pay them this pittance that you're paying them, but somehow you found this new stadium to house the A's, a minor league team. They're going to find trouble building a stadium because the optics of this don't look very good. You know, the whole, hey, we know what we're doing. You do? You forgot to measure the lot. Why would I trust them to build anything? If I were the A's, and I'm not, I want to dispel that rumor. And I know that you can't go back to Oakland. That's like a breakup where you can't go back. I don't care how many flowers you buy. That breakup is done. I would seriously kick the tires on Portland. I seriously would. Because at this point, Las Vegas just looks like a disaster. It looks like a disaster covered in a disaster. And do they have a stadium in Portland right now? Not really. But Providence Park used to be the home of the Portland Mavericks. Watch the movie The Battered Bastards of Baseball if you don't know what that's about. And it could be configured to have a baseball stadium there for the time being. And as I said before, if you were going to move a team, if you had to move the A's, I didn't want them to move the A's. So if you had to move the A's, Portland makes a hell of a lot more sense. You have a fan base that's more that has more deeper roots is the word I guess I'm looking for than you have in Las Vegas. You have a regional fan base that has showed they'll support their teams, and you've had less of a transplanted population, and you would still be able to have a West Coast rivalry. You'd be able to have the Mariners, you'd have the A's, you'd have the Angels representing the state of California in the American League. I think they should realign. That's going to be a topic for another podcast. To me, that makes more sense. And this is being handed like a silver platter. Like, do you know what? This Vegas thing's not going to work, but what if we do go there? They can play in that stadium temporarily. They can play in that stadium temporarily in 2025. It would it be perfect? Of course not. But they're talking about playing in freaking Utah. But it brings up another team in California. And that team are the Angels. You know, the Angels' lease runs out in Anaheim in 2029. That stadium is not in great shape. They may want to get a new one. They've tried renovating it. I mean, it's not a terrible stadium, but it's a bit of a nothing. And they have an ownership that clearly has no emotional ties to Anaheim. They ripped the name Anaheim right off of their team, despite the fact that they were supposed to legally keep it on the team at all times. They call themselves Los Angeles Angels. Look at Fullerton, where I got my degree, is right next to Anaheim. It is not even in Los Angeles County. They just say Los Angeles, make themselves sound like a big team. It all stemmed from the fact the American League wanted to put a team in Los Angeles way, way back when, and the Dodgers beat them to the punch. And when they expanded and created the Angels had to find a home that was a certain number of miles away from Dodger Stadium. And that, at first they played in Old Wrigley, then they shared Dodger Stadium for a little bit, then they had to move, and they had to be shoved out to Anaheim. I would not stun me if the Angels don't get new management and if the Angels don't find a way to privately build a new stadium, because there's no way California's going to pay for this. Why wouldn't they kick the tires in Portland? The next team, there's the White Sox are on shaky ground. Obviously, the Rays are thinking about building a stadium right next to where they are, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Stupider than moving to Las Vegas. The A's can't figure out where they're playing. And, you know, we've got to see what happens with the White Sox. But I think the next big franchise to take a good long look that might be on shaky footing are the Angels. And if you think if there's going to be an expansion, there's going to have to be one pretty soon. If they expand into probably Nashville or Montreal, then Portland would still be available, or Charlotte would still be available. And it would not stun me if the Angels are the next big team to think about moving. But there's one other city that has a long-term solution, and maybe a short-term solution for the A's, that I'm stunned that nobody is talking about. Hey, you know what it's time for right now, right? It is time to talk a little bit about our friends. Where? At FanDuel. Now, look at this is the time for the Super Bowl. And by the time you're hearing this, you know who will be in it. And the Super Bowl is going to be a big, huge event. And for all of you who follow FanDuel, you know that that's America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is about getting the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some great bets. FanDuel has so many ways you can end this season with a W, or 2, or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win the Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also have bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will score, and so much more. New customers join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And one last reminder about Locked On Sports Today. It's the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. We cover the top stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Omaha! Omaha. Why doesn't anyone ever bring up Omaha? Omaha is a big city. Omaha has a lot of money. A lot of corporations have their money, not just Mutual of Omaha. Warren Buffett's there. And wherever Warren Buffett is, money follows. It is, yes, smack dab in the middle of the heartland, but a lot of corporations are there. And in some ways, that's more important than having a big, huge fan base. Getting that corporate money in there is a way to keep the team funded, and maybe, just maybe, having a team be the only team in town. A Major League Baseball team makes Omaha a Major League city. They don't have an NFL team. They don't have an NHL team. They don't have an NBA team. They got the Cornhuskers. Did I mention the Cornhuskers? Throw a team in Omaha, suddenly they're big, big news. But there also should be a place that people talk about for the A's. Do you know why? I'll tell you exactly why. Because they have Charles Schwab Field. Charles Schwab, lots of money, yes. But that is also the stadium where they play the College Baseball World Series. And that's a 20,000-seat stadium that could easily be expanded to about 30,000 seats. One of the reasons why it's so hard, the reason why the A's are having such a pickle to find a new place to play, maybe they'll play where the Portland Pickles play, say that 3 times fast, is there's not a lot of places to plop a Major League Baseball team. There aren't a lot of college stadiums that could fill it. I've made this point before, but you could put a hockey team in Las Vegas right away. You got the Thomas and Mack Center sitting right there. You could put a team in most major cities of the NFL because there's a college football stadium right nearby. You can get a basketball or NHL arena in most cities, but there isn't a 25 to 30,000 seat baseball stadium sitting in most places, especially since we've moved away from multi-purpose stadiums. The minute you do that, all of a sudden it becomes a lot harder to move a team. It was easy to expand into Denver and Miami because Mile High Stadium where the Broncos played could be expanded to baseball. Joe Robbie Stadium where the Marlins played could be expanded to baseball. It's the main reason why Montreal is still a site. But here's a stadium. You could put a Major League Stadium. It's a new stadium. It's a relatively new stadium. So I'm sure the facilities aren't horrible. And you could have a team play there. And all of a sudden, you're the only game in town. The A's are not going to be the only game in town in Las Vegas. I don't know if you know about this. I've done a little bit of homework, clearly more than the A's did. There's some entertainment options in Las Vegas. I mean, you go out there and say, are we going to see Celine Dion, Penn and Teller, gamble, get drunk, or watch a minor league baseball team play a Major League Baseball team? Gee whiz, I wonder what's going to get more attention. But Omaha, I don't understand why it's never brought up. I do not understand. But hey, what do I know? What do I know? It's just a major city with a baseball-ready stadium and a ton of money around it, and baseball would be the biggest game in town. You don't think fans in Omaha would pack that place? Corporate money would pack that place? Omaha. It makes a hell of a lot more sense than Las Vegas. If the A's became the Omaha A's, that, you know what? Again, I don't want them to move. Makes a lot more sense than Las Vegas. Trivia question. Some of you may know this, and I mentioned this in a couple of episodes. Tropicana Field, the home of the Tampa Bay Rays, was built before the Camden Yards revolution of stadiums. It was built to specifically lure one team to Florida. Several other teams eventually flirted with Tampa Bay, but who was the team that the city of St. Petersburg built that stadium to lure what Major League Baseball team? That is your trivia question right now. So follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully with Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Praising the Cubs, realizing just now that I still have my FanDuel overlay on, and wondering why Omaha doesn't get the love that Las Vegas does. This has been Locked On MLB. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.